Okay, so good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Lots of people, but I see a lot of tired faces. So good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. You can do better than that. Once more, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, so good afternoon, everybody. I have this timer staring me at the face, so we'll try to maximize how much time that we have. So I hope you are enjoying yourselves. I hope you are enjoying yourselves. Okay, so we're going to talk about skills, synergizing skills and technology today. I have got two lovely people with me on this panel. I'm proud and privileged to be talking to them this afternoon, okay? So when we look at these two words, skills and technology, okay, we spend a little time trying to see how we can build synergy around that, okay? So skills, as you know, is something that is omnipresent in most organizations and an enigma to us in HR, right? Everybody forces us to hire for skills, develop skills, train, cross-train, multi-skill, and we are forever under pressure by the business by saying that, hey guys, you're not getting skilled people in the organization. So from that point of view, I call it an enigma. And then there are also people who will tell you, yo, guys, your skills hiring is not keeping up with the technology. Okay? So skills is an important aspect, whether you're talking about skills at the entry level, at the mid-management level, whatever you are. Right? If you look at how skills developed, starting from the medieval ages where, they had guilds and craftsmen, and skills was a closed kind of thing. You have, the people who used to do skills in sort of a secret sort of way. To the scientific management, when skill was democratized, our friend Frederick Winslow Taylor said that everything has to be broken down, okay? And every little part has to be taken. And then came the age when assembly lines came in. Okay, skills were further diffused. Okay, a Ford Model T, which was earlier done, assembled by a group of skilled workmen, which took about 12 hours, now started getting done in 90 minutes or so. And then came slowly the behavioral school, which says, in addition to skills, motor skills, you need cognitive skills also. All right, so the Hawthorne experiment, the Ahmedabad Calico Mills, et cetera, et cetera. And then we proceeded further, into the end of the industrial age and into the what we call the IT age, okay, where skills became totally, kind of different in terms of its half-life. Your skill which is relevant today may not be relevant tomorrow, and then our friend Mr. Altman actually got generative AI into the picture. Okay? And he created, in that process, new skills like prompt generator or a prompt engineer. Okay? So new technology is actually getting a lot of skills into the game, new skills. So there's a constant fight with us in HR in terms of how do we acquire people with new skills, how do we develop skills which are relevant to today's technology, and how do we ensure that we have fungibility of skills? Isn't that the problem today? Yes or no? Right. So today we are going to talk about these things. So first thing is I will ask my lovely co-panelist, Pratibha, to talk about skills as such, right? In the dynamic landscape of business, how are organizations keeping up with the skills program? How are you adopting on the go so that you realize that skills are synchronous, or there is synchronicity of the skills with whatever your business is, whether it is manufacturing, whether it's IT, whether it's a BPO, KPO, etc. All yours.
Thank you, and no, there is no answer to that yet. But having said that, I think when I was thinking about this problem on skills, I had to just think that I've not really invested in a new skill for myself in such a long time. And that is this FOMO, right? There's this whole space of, oh gosh, people are talking now. What Shrikant talks about, I just won't know. Yesterday, he gave me a very scared part about 2.0 and 3.0. Gosh, I don't even know anything about some of the terminology that he uses. So I just wanted to start off by saying that it's such a vast space, and it's just impossible. It's impossible to sort of scale. It's impossible to get to know everything. So first, do yourselves a favor and give yourselves space to say, I just don't know everything. Organizations don't know everything, and we will just have to figure things along the way. So having said that, I was just thinking about what is this whole skill space, right? And in an organizational context, it simply is a competency or an ability that will eventually end up paying you money, end up making you earn more money and progress and grow. And then a new set of skills that will sort of come on. So there's a whole space of relevant skills that we will just sort of boil this discussion down to. Now, within those, it's this, again, I don't know how many of you have seen the McKinsey skill report, and they have a very nice way of dividing these skills. There's cognitive skills, so simple things like storytelling, visioning. There's digital skills, which is the hard skills that we are going to be sort of talking about a little bit more. There's interpersonal skills, so team effectiveness, leading teams, collaborating, and then there is just self-leadership. How do I organize myself? How do I respond to failure? How do I learn? Now, can you imagine an ecosystem that has to really provide for you to be able to build these? One thing is to go find it on Udemy, another on LinkedIn, another on your own learning system or your open university. Shell has a massive open university. And I just don't find that people are able to do this by themselves. Organizations are not going to be able to do this by themselves, which is why we have this constant conflict of going out and finding, no, but we found somebody with A, B, and C, but we just want somebody else on the outside. And that one will come in, but he doesn't have D, E, and X, right? So I think the answer to skill development, to any of these, and I just wanted to quickly finish, comes down to having some very essential things in your organization to make it successful. And one is talent processes. You need to have fungibility. You need to be able to have people move, understand, and even sort of be able to build from point A to point B. Fungibility, succession planning, an ability to take risk with candidates or staff and people. Then there's this whole space around learning and how much investment. And all this needs money. It just doesn't come with allowing people with more bhashan and gyan and saying, why don't you just go and look up on things? You've got to, put in resources. You've got to put in new age technology and otherwise in order to help people run. And the other part is an environment, and the environment and the culture. Things like psychological safety, very undersold, but extremely important when you want to have a learner mindset in the organization. How do you learn when you don't fail? And how do you fail when you don't learn? So basically, it's a very important mix of an ecosystem, culture, investment, and just a proper change management that even defines to you, why do you need to move from position A to position B, and of where is it going to take you, and how is it going to go through. So I'm just leaving that entire ecosystem and space back, Soumitra, and handing it back to say you can't think of skill alone. It's just an extensive space there.
Of course, yes. So as we move along the technology, kind of space, okay, in Reddington we have a term called technology friction, which is basically the rate of technology advances versus the rate of technology adoption. And the space is growing, right? So you have AI, ML, Gen AI, IoT, you've got, AR, VR, everything. And each of these things have its impact on skills, all right? So skills, when we're talking about, and I'm prepping for my next question to Shrikant, skills, when we talk about, has got two impacts, right, of technology. One is that I, as a person, okay, how do I develop myself, all right? And then the technology of learning, okay, personalization, okay, now instead of the learner going to the learning is coming to the learner, how do I personalize, how do I democratize this learning is something that technology is helping us. Okay? So my question to you, Srikanth, is that how do you think technology is, number one, impacting the individual employee at the workplace, and how are people employing technology to create that learning experience, which is becoming very, very important today in terms of both susceptibility and retentivity of learning?
Great. Thank you, Sumitro. So what I'm going to do is, very quickly, I got only 6 minutes, or rather some part is going to be kept for Q&A. Let me give you a very brief experiment, or rather, shall we call it, my own experience, how we use technology to continuously skill or upskill people. But before I get into it, I belong to the IT services industry, so my experience that I'm going to share is very specific to that, where, as you all know, you must be reading about it, I'm sure, and my co-speakers touched upon it, there's an explosion, massive explosion of skill changes and the characteristics of the skill clusters or skill taxonomy. Now, how do we really kind of blend with it, and how do we really cope with it? The most important thing is, before we start, each one has to understand a business model. Okay, each one, I mean, all of you are coming from different industries, so mine, as I said, is IT services industry, and it's going to be specific to that. In our case, obviously it's all about billing and skilling. There's nothing complicated about it. We skill our people, we build them quickly, and that's about it. So in this scenario, what really happened, well, let's start with a quick evolution of the IT industry in the last 30, 40 years. First, there were mainframes, right? So pardon me if I'm using a little bit of a technology jargon out there, but most of you heard about mainframes. So it all started with mainframes. It was all about maintaining and developing applications on maintain. There was a certain skill set. Promptly in 1990s, you had what you call the client-server technology or web-server technologies, what I call Web 1.0. So it's not too much jargon, but Web 1.0 brought in the web-server technologies, the landscape changed. Promptly came Web 2.0, which is nothing but the cloud, data services, analytics, and so on and so forth. Again, the technology and the skill clusters changed. And now, today, we're talking about Web 3.0, which is all about cloud, data, microservices, and Gen AI, which they talked about. AI is playing its role in every aspect of technology. So what do? We have to go to the market and hire people? Impossible. Okay, we talk about LLM and prompt engineering, all those new technologies which are coming in. It's impossible for us to go out to the market. All we got to do is reskill and upskill our people, right? In a situation like this is where technology platform comes into play. So when I'm talking about a platform, it's nothing but an architecture which really pushes, gamifies the whole technology clusters, like a co-pilot. You heard about co-pilot, right? So like a co-pilot, it literally traces every person in what project he's working in, which skill is he working in, and pushes that particular skill set or the content to the individual out there for him to learn on the go. So it's more of a pull rather than a push. So how do you create an architecture? Now, obviously, if I take about 10, 15 minutes, I can rather kind of display the architecture. But simply put, it's a gamified platform which identifies where the individual is working and personalizes that particular skill set to that individual at the right time. This platform helps you in on-the-go training, number one. Number two experiment, or rather shall we call it innovation, is you heard about Geek Cloud, or what you call about cloud-based applications which really help people, where you put a problem, a chunk of a problem on the cloud, and a person comes and solves, and he has some tutors or people who really mentor him to learn that particular code and so on and so forth. So these are the two platforms which are really innovative platforms which we created, which really skill people on the go and help people upskill or reskill themselves instead of going to the market. Now, what happens in this situation is obviously your costs come down. You're able to on-the-go skill people and get the projects done. So that's basically what I want to share. I can, if you have more and more Q&A, we can talk more about it. But that's fundamentally the technology architecture which really helps us to hyper-personalize, as they call it, the right skill at the right time for the right person. That's the code on which, mantra on which we operate. Yep.
Thanks, Srikanth. So as you can see, skills are going to be the currency for the future. Companies will be valued on the kind of skills they have within them. Okay, no longer will be other valuation methodologies being used. Skills is also going to be a big differentiator, and for us in HR, I think we have to stay ahead of the curve. Well, when I say ahead of the curve, there are two parts to it. One is that we must make sure that all our people in the organization understand the concept of changing skills in terms of what is changing outside in the ecosystem. That's one. And number two is that we have to ensure that these digitally savvy people who are forever on their phones looking for personalized recommendations from e-commerce people or design studios and all that, we have to ensure that our learning is pushed in a personalized manner to them, which means that we have to ensure that we understand the people, their learning patterns, and what they are in terms of consuming every day. Okay? I think these are two things that are very important for us in HR to develop. All right? And the last thing that I want to tell you is that skills is something that we have to constantly be on the move. Earlier, I remember I used to have a competency dictionary, and I used to refer to it anytime I wanted to. But now, JDs are changing every day. All of you have heard, hire for skills, not for roles. So I will rest my case over there because we have got about a couple of minutes for any questions that you might like to ask three of us. Thank you. If there are no questions, I would assume that we have done a fantastic job. Oh, yes, okay. No, there's one. Can you come forward? We can't really hear you.
Thank you for the fantastic sharing. I just want to know, how do you create the need among the employees that they have to upskill?
So that's why I said, 5 minutes to explain an architecture of this kind. So let me take it on. Now, when you talk about skill clusters, I talked about the changing skill clusters. It's about how you define the problem first. So in this age of so-called Web 3.0, I call it Web 3.0, where you have 4 different skill clusters, which I talked about it. There's a cloud, there's a data, and there are the whole ecosystem of personalization, which are, hyper-personalization. Like when you go to a banking, you go to insurance, all of them are today having personalized products to the need of the individual, right or wrong. You go to a bank, it's no more a general banking. It tells you what fixed deposit you got, what housing loan you're going to get, what insurance you're going to get. Likewise, a skilling platform understands the skill clusters, which is predefined, and as you work, it's like a co-pilot which understands this particular stack of skills. Say cloud, AWS, pardon me for using a little bit of a jargon here, AWS plus .NET plus Java stack. So there are 3 different stacks from 3 different clusters. It just automatically pushes all 3 content together. Of course, you got to design the content. We did it about over 4 years of time. We built this particular content in the platform. It pulls it from 3 different clusters, pushes it to the individual, because that's a project which requires that skill. So need is identified automatically, just like that's good old AI at play here. So the need is very clear. That includes soft skills, by the way. So you have various gradation of what level the person is working in. Is he a project manager? Is he a software coder? Is he a customer engagement manager? And clearly the soft skills are very well predefined to 80% accuracy. There's nothing called accuracy here. It's an agile development model. Like in old days, we used to have a waterfall method of software development. Today it's called agile DevOps. There's no more tester, coder, planner. Everybody is all in one, rolled into one. It's got to be agile. How many of you use Apple phone and Android phone here? Most of you, right? Every day, don't you go home, or at least 3 days, you get a code drop, upgrade your platform. What used to happen 6 years back? One application used to be built over 3 years, and it'll stay for you for 6 years. Not anymore. The application is getting continuously upgraded, and there's a code drop every time when you go to your iPhone and suddenly kind of upgrade your system. That's the speed at which it happens. And it's the same speed you got to skill, not like the previous 6 years of batch session where you have 3 years of courseware, and then by the time he comes out, he's outdated. Doesn't work that way anymore.
Thanks, Srikanth. Pradeep, you want to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that at a very philosophical level, remember I started by saying I've not really learned any new skill. That's untrue. But need actually comes in when you are in touch with your environment and you know what's changing. So Shell is an energy company. We don't call ourselves an oil and gas company anymore. Electric chargers, the new story. Hydrogen, a new story. Power, nuclear power, new story. Biofuels, low carbon fuels. It's a completely new territory that the company is sort of chartering and changing into. So at a very philosophical level, your relevance in your own ecosystem, and one is of course technology aided need that actually throws up like the Android and like the iPhone, which beeps. But for me, I think it's been a far more internal sort of a alarm beep that actually reads from where I am and where the company is headed, where the strategy is headed, where climate change is headed. How much do I even know? What's the difference between green, blue, and red hydrogen? What does India need? How does that translate back to the ecosystem? Where does it mean in terms of the skills that I'm hiring for? So it just forces you to stay abreast if you want to be relevant for yourself and in your environment.
I'll also fall back on a very hackneyed answer by an HR guy. You know, all of you have done a million surveys, okay? And the thing that has come out is that, oh, I want my personal need, personal development and professional development. I don't care for the salary, which again is a misnomer, they do, okay? But more and more people are coming to us and say, hey, what are you doing to develop me? Okay, I want that role. I want this move to a global position and all that. I think it's a combination of push and pull. Creating that need should be an HR intervention, okay, with different carrots and all that. And there should also be a push by saying, okay, 5 mandatory learning days in a year. All right? So that's what we can do from HR.
As a reward strategy. And for hypos and top performers in any large enterprise-based organization, right? And hence, usually there has been a slump in adoption. And with the Gen Zs adopting to Coursera, Udemy's, GitHubs of the world, when they are studying itself, how relevant is a skill strategy for a large-based enterprise? Do you think adoption could be improved? If yes, by what all means?
Large, she said large organization. So.
Absolutely very important question, because this push-pull story has been really difficult for us. We've had a skill strategy that, I'll just take a very quick example of our finance operations organization. This is the GCC that does finance operations, about 13,000 people. And there is this whole space of how you divide them. There's 80% of them that will always do core operations. There's about 10 to 15% that will do process excellence, and another few that is very much on top that does the discretionary sort of floating sort of work that comes and goes, very, very roughly. So it's very important for us to have a skill strategy, right? I mean, there is a technology platform for it, there is a definition and a job catalog for it. There is this whole space of mandatory learnings and this space that says, especially for the hypos, you need to do A, B, and C to be able to get there. Absolutely. But adoption and how far it goes has only been when we have mandated it so far.
Yeah. So there has to be a skills
otherwise.
pyramid, and you should have initiatives built around those skills pyramid. I understand that you don't want to spray paint your training budget across the workforce, so therefore you do have a bell curve, some of you have a bell curve, some of you do heuristics and whatever it is. But at the end of the day, I think it's very important that the entire organization kind of upskills itself. Otherwise, there'll be huge gaps which can be dysfunctional in nature, right? Shrikant, you want to?
Yeah, okay. Let me give you a very radically different approach to the whole thing. And this is a pretty, I've been writing about this for a very long time. There's nothing called adoption. Adoption has to be automatic. What I mean is, once you have a platform, you have your good old HR performance management system, which I personally believe is completely outdated. Okay, where you just put about A, B, C, D, or top 20, top 70, and so on. I keep asking this question, why do you reward for performance? Performance is past. Your potential is learnability. So why don't you reward for learning quotient and what skills which are relevant today is the person learning, and gamify the platform, which we did. We gamified. It's like literally looking at your scoreboard. Okay, Shrikant Kara, I am number 1. Pratibha is much ahead of me because she learned so many skills. So I'm looking at the scorecard out there and compelled, number 1. Number 2, I'm going to be paid for my LQ, not just performance. Say 30%, 70% is up to you how to divide it. 30% for performance, 70% for LQ. I call it LQ, you call it whatever you want to. Fundamentally, the cluster of skills. Pay for that. Because you're going to have better payback and return on investment when you pay for your learnability rather than only for performance. As simple as that. So change your HR mindsets completely and design a system which pays for learnability. Then adoption happens automatically.
we have something in the organization which is called mid-year development dialogues, okay, which we cascade down to the last guy standing, right? That helps us build in two things. One is awareness that there's so much to learn. And number two is that what can I learn myself so it impacts my performance? So it makes good sense it made a lot of sense for us to have a mid-year development dialogue. And it's different from a performance dialogue. It's a mid-year development dialogue, okay? And people have really done wonders there. Yes. So I think we have terribly short. So
Thank you so
everybody.
very much.